Takuma Sakamoto was a pathetic shut-in who couldn't even talk to another human without breaking into a nervous sweat. His only friends were the pixels on his computer screen, and his only meals were instant noodles so cheap even cockroaches turned their nose up at them. While other kids had dreams, he had nothing but a keyboard, greasy hands, and an MMO account where he pretended to be the most powerful demon lord alive. But one day, instead of logging out of his lonely game, fate logged him into another world, and suddenly this socially awkward loser became the all-powerful Diablo, the true demon lord feared across the land. Diablo's summoners an elf and a Pantherian debate who summoned him. Both believed they were the ones as they followed the summoning ritual procedures including the kiss. Upon learning this, Diablo is left awe-stricken that he was kissed and regrets not enjoying it further. As the two summoners continue to debate whether who summoned Diablo and unintentionally reveal to the curious Diablo that he's at the top of a large stone tower known as the Starfall Tower. Approaching the bickering ladies, Diablo realizes that for the longest time he's never really talked with anyone all of his life, which leaves him in quite a predicament. Therefore, Diablo decides to act in his MMO character persona, and then addresses the two in a haughty manner, ordering the two to shake hands with a smile. Initially hesitant to do so, an overwhelming power forces the two to obey Diablo's command. After this is done, slave collars appear on both of the summoners' necks, which astounds all three of them. At the bottom of the tower, the trio walk and talk about the failed ritual. In it, Diablo realizes that his demon lord ring reflected the enslavement spell onto his would-be enslavers. Detailing to his summoners that magic has no effect on him, the group head to the nearby town to dispel the enslavement spell on them. The elf realizing that she and her companion haven't introduced themselves to Diablo, she introduces herself as Shira L. Greenwood, an aspiring adventurer. Her companion, the Pantherian, introduces herself as Rem Galu, and she seeks to improve her skills as an adventurer. Being labeled as a rare summon creature, Diablo denotes that statement, and not wanting to reveal himself as a shut-in, he proclaims that he's a demon lord. Hearing this impresses Shira that she managed to summon a demon lord, which annoys Rem, sparking another argument between the two. This is stopped by Diablo, who snaps at the two, and they then continue forth to the city. Reaching their destination of Faltra City, they check in at the Peace of Mind Inn where they're greeted by the bubbly innkeeper May. Nauseous over being in what he considers a large crowd, Diablo is further shocked that Shira wants to register a room that's shared with Diablo. The reason behind this is due to the lack of funding they have, and Rem chimes in insisting that Diablo stay in her room as she was the one who summoned him. An argument sparks between the two, and they're stopped by May, who threatens to throw them out. It's then revealed that the three of them will share a room with a single bed. Contemplating his predicament over the use of a single bed, a woman acquainted with Rem named Celestine Baudelaire and her two followers enter the room. Diablo recalls the name, and Shira states that Celestine is the head of the Mages Association. Remembering Celestines, or Seals as she wishes to be called, is a prominent figure in the Cross Reverie game, as the one who maintains the barrier in the city. Seal's initial motive was to talk with Rem. However, seeing the slave collars on Rem and Shira's necks along with Diablo being there, she states her curiosity about their situation. That night at the inn's cafeteria, Seals is brought up to date with everything involving the failed enslavement ritual. She's also informed that Diablo is unable to dispel the enslavement cast on them. After Seals realizes she'll have to research from scratch about a way to dispel the slave collars around Shira and Rem's neck. Diablo asks in an authoritarian manner about her business with them, which causes a rebuke from one of her followers named Galuk. Although internally Diablo is frightened by Galuk, he gives a menacing retort that irks him and is also reproved by his superior Seals. The subject then changes to a brief conversation between Seals and Rem, who declines having more bodyguards be assigned to her despite Seals' well-meant intentions. With that settled with, Seals party leave for the night, and Diablo asks Rem about her relationship with Seals. Rem refuses to speak about it, and Diablo has an epiphany that Rem's secret is related to an important main story event that's best to learn about it beforehand to avoid a preventable disaster in the future. Grabbing Rem and placing her on his shoulder, Diablo takes her back to their room to torture her. Back in their room, Diablo tortures Rem in a light and innocent manner until she finally confesses her secret to him. Rem reveals that she has the Demon Lord Krebscombe sealed within her body, and Diablo recalls the Demon Lord as the strongest boss in the game, stating that she wishes to release and extinguish Krebscombe's soul from her body. Diablo then details doing that would kill Rem in the process. Furthermore, he deduces that Rem's relationship with Seals is because of this goal of hers, and that Seals is the only one privy to Rem's predicament. The sealing of the Demon Lord is also hereditary, as Rem's mother had Krebscombe sealed in her body before she died. Fully aware of Rem's predicament, Diablo vows to help Rem, which gets her emotional as Diablo won't leave her because of her condition. Afterward, Diablo goes on an excursion around the town while reflecting on how he's done everything all by his lonesome due to his nature. Eventually, he's approached by Galluck and his colleagues from the Mages Association. This leads into an altercation between Diablo and Galluck, who summons a level 30 salamander. While Galluck boasts and threatens Diablo about his summon, Diablo notes that while impressive, its level is way too weak. The salamander then belches a blaze of fire at Diablo, who walks out of it unscathed. Panic-stricken, Galluck orders his summon to incinerate Diablo, and the salamander fires a massive flamethrower-like attack from its mouth. However, the attack still has no effect on the level 150 Diablo. Equipping his wand, Diablo then casts Explosion that eviscerates the salamander. Approaching the confuddled Galluck, who demands to know who Diablo is, Diablo answers that he's a Diablo, a demon lord from another world. Awakening in the peace of mind in, Diablo realizes that his experiences from the previous day weren't a dream. Diablo then puts himself into an awkward situation in bed with the two ladies. Later that day, while walking in the streets, Diablo notes the various races that appear in the world. It's detailed by Diablo that where they're walking there are no humans around, to which Rem answers the district they're walking in is for demi-humans only. Internally, Diablo notes the race disparity between humans and demi-humans, and then asks if levels are the main concept of strength in the world. Shira confirms it, but has yet to learn her level, and Rem claims that she's a level 40 summoner. The place where they're heading to currently, the Adventurers Guild should be able to discern Shira's level once she registers there. At the Adventurers Guild, a fight between two beastmen occurs, and the overall atmosphere of the place has Diablo nervous. Wasting no time, the trio head to the second floor to register themselves as adventurers. Unable to read, Diablo has Shira register him, but states it as he loathes tedious and trivial work, and Shira enjoys the fact as it reinforces that she's his true master. Things, however, get more complicated when a blood seal is needed as the final process. Although he's anxious to do this, Diablo puts on a brave face and what he considers gives himself a tiny cut on his thumb. On the other hand, his tiny cut turns out to be deeper than he anticipated. Next, the group stand before a mirror that appraises their levels. Shira is level 30, much to her dismay. Then Diablo goes next, and a scene where the mirror spaz out occurs. This attracts the attention of the guild master Sylvie, who asks the trio to come into her officer. Inside the office, Sylvie states that due to Diablo's high level, there aren't any job requests he can take. However, Diablo is willing to work regardless, as he only cares for the rewards. Hence, Sylvie assigns the group to subjugate a Madara snake in the man-eating woods. En route to the woods, the group discuss about the job they've been assigned, and how its requester was thought to be Seals from the Mages Association. The subject changes to Diablo, suggesting they should have used a teleport spell or item to reach their destination. However, no such things exist. Finally reaching the man-eating woods, Diablo notes how macabre the woods look in contrast to the game. Just then, Shira details that they're surrounded. Therefore, Diablo casts Burst Rain, setting part of the woods ablaze and pulling the ambushers out of hiding. Said ambushers were elves, one of whom Shira knew as Celsior, who claims he's there to rescue her. Celsior aims his bow and arrow at Diablo, while demanding he release Shira, the princess of the Kingdom of Greenwood, demanding answers as to why the elves would post a request at the Adventurers Guild under the Mages Association. Celsior refuses to answer Diablo's question. This leads Diablo to figure that there's only one person who could have orchestrated this. Frustrated by this turn of events, Shira speaks her mind, saying she doesn't want to marry her brother and bear his child. A back-and-forth debate between Shira and Celsior occurs, leading to Diablo retaliate against the elves, who fire off a barrage of arrows at him, but are ineffective. Celsior then uses what is called a Tempest Arrow and fires it off at Diablo. However, that too is ineffective against him. Unamused by the elves' antics, Diablo casts Freesia, which freezes the periphery into ice. Out of nowhere, Galuk appears and chastises the elves, who is, in turn, berated by Diablo and reprimanded by Rem. Distraught, Galuk flees the scene and Shira orders the elves to inform her brother that she's never returning home. With their work all settled at that place, they return to the inn. That night in their room at the end, Shira and Diablo have a heart-to-heart with each other that is interrupted by a livid Rem. Diablo and the group sit in Sylvie's office, where she assigns the group a special request that was commissioned specifically for Diablo. The person who submitted the request was Seals, and is believed to be in relation to one of her subordinates' recent misbehavior toward the group. Rem states that she doesn't want to accept it due to her being indebted to Seals, but Diablo still insists he go with or without Rem. Once that is settled with, Shira reads the details involved with the quest, and it's a simple delivery quest, where they have to deliver refreshments to the bridge of Uluk. Right before Diablo and the others were about to leave the Adventurers Guild, a man known as Emil stops them and confronts Diablo. Haughtily, Emil introduces himself as not only a superhuman level 50 warrior and challenges Diablo to a duel. Although Diablo is impressed by Emil's personality, he acts in his game persona and taunts Emil. He, in turn, declares his love for all women, will save the enslaved Rem and Shira from Diablo. Wasting no time, Emil uses the sword ability, Sword Smite, against Diablo, but he parries the blow with his wand. For his next move, Emil tries to use another sword skill called Alp's Fall, but is knocked out by Diablo before he could. Contemplating on the disparity of the skill levels of the people in the world from the original game, Diablo concludes that Emil is just an idiot. Up again, Emil tries to attack Diablo, only to be stopped by Rem and Shira, who explain their situation to Emil. Now privy to the whole situation, Emil laughs off the situation and apologizes for his behavior from before. He reintroduces himself and claims if they ever need help to not hesitate to contact him, and then walks off in a gleeful manner. Afterward, Diablo and Shira, with the quest items, head to the bridge of Ulrug, and on their way there, Shira suggests they take a dip in a nearby river. Flustered by the suggestion, Diablo rejects that notion, and they continue forth. Reaching the bridge of Ulug, they're stopped by a group of soldiers who mistake Diablo as a fallen. However, one of the soldiers named Boris recognizes him as the horned demon everyone was talking about in the town. The two then learn from Boris that a fallen with a large army of demons is heading that way. Noting that this sort of event never occurred in the games, Diablo wonders what could have triggered it. Furthermore, Diablo notes that due to the soldiers stationed at the bridge have such low levels, the demons would break through the bridge. On the other hand, the demonic invaders wouldn't be able to damage Faltra City due to the barrier erected there. Shira states that the invasion could be related to the demons wanting to resurrect Krebskulm. Diablo figures they must be aware of Rem's seal. The soldier Boris then gives Diablo a notice of gratitude for their delivery, and after hearing Boris' anxiety, Diablo volunteers to stay and fend off the invasion. At the inn, Seals informs Rem that she discharged Galuk for his recent actions. The subject then changes to Diablo's background and how Seals is suspicious of him being a fallen rather than a demon lord from another world. Rem refutes that notion, defending Diablo not being a fallen. Just then, a hysterical Galuk arrives at the scene with his hands all bloody, demanding to hear from Seals that he wasn't fired from the Mages Association. Right as Galuk was about to stab himself with a black demonic dagger, Rem tries to stop him by summoning a shadow snake. This fails as Galuk still manages to stab himself and then transforms into the fallen Gregor. Meanwhile, Diablo continues fighting against the demon invaders, until the commander of the demons named Edelgard confronts him, and the two then fight. Refugees head into Faltra City believing they'll be safe from the incoming demon invaders because of Seal's barrier that she erected over the city. Unbeknownst to them, she was in a pickle because of her former subordinate Gallic turned into a fallen by the name of Gregor. Rem and Seals escape from the Peace of Mind Inn, and once they reach a dead end, Gregor confronts the two and Rem summons a Sulau. However, the summon is easily beaten with a single punch. From the sky, Emil lands nearby Rem and Seals, while a large group of adventurers arrive at the scene to help them. Emil then fights against Gregor, but despite being overpowered by his opponent, he stubbornly fights on, following his creed as a defender of all women. Meanwhile, at the bridge of Uluk, Diablo's fight against Edelgard continues, stating the futility of Edelgard's attacks against him. Edelgard prepares to use sacrifice charge against Diablo, but it is ineffective against him. Astonished that her special attack had no effect on him, Edelgard is taunted by Diablo, who notes that her attack was the first time he was ever damaged since entering that world. Just then Boris notifies Diablo that Faltra City has been invaded by a fallen and attacking Seals and Rem. Realizing the dire situation, Diablo then begins to cast a grand magic spell and warns Edelgard to withdraw or he'll cast it. On the other hand, Edelgard refuses to back down. Therefore, Diablo casts White Nova, which eviscerates the surrounding area, including Demon Army. Although heavily wounded, Edelgard manages to survive the spell, and wasting no time, Diablo uses the magic spell called Return, and he along with Shira teleport back to the town. By that time, Gregor has already defeated the adventurers that surrounded him, and a heavy wounded Emil refuses to concede defeat. Just then, Diablo arrives and casts a wind spell on Gregor, sending him backward. Before starting his battle against Gregor, Diablo thanks Emil for his efforts, and reassures him that he'll take it from there. He then gives Seals a healing power to treat Emil's wounds, and then confronts Gregor. Starting the fight off, Gregor casts Dark Bullet, but the spell is instantly reflected back at Gregor by Diablo's ring. Diablo then uses his own Dark Bullet spell that breaks off most of Gregor's protective skin. In retaliation, Gregor uses Dark Press. However, that move is reflected back onto Gregor, and Diablo then casts multiple Dark Press of his own. The gravitational force to the attack pins Gregor to the ground, who then begs for mercy, but Diablo shows none. He then finishes Gregor off with a magic spell Naraku. The fight now over, Shira tearfully embraces Diablo, and Rem grabs Diablo's hand and thanks him for saving her. Trying to act in character, Diablo proclaims the only reason why he helped Rem was because she belongs to him due to the slave collar around her neck. Eventually, the death toll of the attack on the city is released, and the majority of lives lost were adventurers. 10 days later, after the attack on the city, Diablo rests on his bed and is nearly courted by Shira, who is sequentially stopped by Rem with a drop kick. This causes the two to latch onto Diablo's arms until Sylvie arrives in their room. She informs the group that the Lord of the City was given a non-negotiable ultimatum to hand over Shira within 10 days, or else a war would be waged. Hence, the Lord of the City and Sylvie request Diablo to prevent the war from occurring. Shocked that the Kingdom of Greenwood is going to wage war over her, Shira is informed by Sylvie it's the truth. She then asks Diablo if he'll accept the quest given by her and the City Lord to prevent the war from happening. Internally, Diablo wants to refuse the quest due to the nature of said quest. Sylvie then details that Shira's brother Kira put a huge bounty on Shira's head. Hearing this shocks Diablo so much that he becomes livid and decides to accept the quest and meet with the Lord of the City. The trio are then led by Sylvie to the Lord's manor and are disclosed what information Sylvie has on said Lord. Arriving at the manor, the group is introduced to the Lord of the City, Chester Ray Galford. As cold and curt like the rumors that surround him, Sylvie manages to have Galford introduce himself to the group, and, in turn, Shira and Rem introduce themselves too. Although disconcerted, Diablo manages to introduce himself to Galford and details his desire for more information on the request that Galford submitted. Elated that he successfully spoke without hesitation, Galford mentions the report of Diablo being a demon lord from another world. Retorting that question, Diablo speaks in character, which flusters the group. But Galford takes no offense to the comment and further elaborates about his request. Galford then claims the situation at hand could easily be resolved by Shira merely surrendering herself to the Kingdom of Greenwood. but Diablo refuses to allow that. When Galford asks what reason Shira would have for abandoning her lavish lifestyle in the Kingdom of Greenwood, she answers that her goals and desires would never be achieved there. To that statement, Diablo opines how being free is an arduous thing to achieve. However, it is a worthy goal so long as you don't stray from your own path. Once those matters are settled with, Galford introduces an Imperial Knight from the capital, a woman by the name of Alicia Cristella. The Imperial Knight is then introduced to everyone, and once she's acquainted with them all, Alicia hands Sylvie a bag of money that was reparations from the capital. Alicia then has a bonding moment with Shira, claiming she supports Shira's decision. Although Diablo is envious of Alicia's communicative skills, she claims her respect toward Diablo for protecting the bridge of Ulug and Faltra City from the Fallen. Flustered by Alicia's compliments, Diablo thanks her, but in character demands that she never speak so frivolously with him. Understanding Diablo's demand, Alicia swears to follow it. Back in the streets of the city, the group head to a weaponsmith. Diablo's intentions are to get a weapon that'll make it easy for him to handle weaker opponents. They do so, and Diablo purchases a scythe for himself. Right as they were going to head to an apothecary to buy potions at, the group is ambushed by bounty hunters who kidnap Shira. They're all dealt with by Diablo, Alicia, and Emile, who appears at the end. That afternoon, Emile explains that he learned from the Adventurers Guild about the bounty placed on Shira's head by her brother. When asked what are his plans with the group of bounty hunters, Emile answers that he intends to beat some sense into the group for disrespecting women. Emile now out of the picture, which leads to Diablo having a brief moment with Shira over her well-being now that she's a target for bounty hunters. Rem also wedges herself into said moment, and Alicia apologizes for her incompetence over the entire fiasco. On the other hand, Diablo orders her to be more self-compassionate with herself, and Alicia agrees in a fervent manner, which is the opposite of which that Diablo intended for her to feel. The sounds of someone's stomach growling is heard, and surprisingly it isn't Shira's, but Alicia's, so the group head off to get some food while debating on what they want to eat. In the Peace of Mind in cafeteria, Seals visits Diablo's party to inform them that she's found someone who could remove the slave collars off Rem and Shira's. The person in question is a slave merchant who set up their caravan in the market recently. Alicia chimes in, noting the importance of their mission at hand involving the Kingdom of Greenwood. However, Diablo decides that resolving the matter with the slave collars won't hinder their progress with the Kingdom of Greenwood. Afterward, the group at the slave market, where Diablo is a tad surprised by the slaves' treatment there. The owner of the establishment, Hideous, greets the group and at first believes that Diablo is trying to sell off one of his slaves. This earns Hideous a sharp retort from Diablo, whose magical energy starts to exude out of his body, to which Hideous notices. Shira also details that she can see Diablo's magical power as well, which shocks Rem and Alicia. Eventually, Hideous reads the letter written by Seals about Rem and Shira's situation and agrees to help them. Hideous also notices the magical flow coming from Rem and inquires if she got pregnant from a demon. A scene between Rem and Shira occurs, and Hideous then details that the energy could be from a fallen. Diablo cuts in and demands that they learn how to remove the slave collars from Shira and Rem's necks. Not feeling well, Rem decides to wait outside and is joined by Alicia, and they have a heart-to-heart with each other. Back inside the caravan, Diablo learns how to remove the slave collar through magical flow and physical contact. Astoundingly, Diablo makes incredible progress so briskly. That night it's learned that Diablo quit just as they were about to finish the ritual. The reason behind this is due to how intricate and potent the magical behind the slave collar is. Immediately as Alicia was going to retire to her personal room at the inn, the sound of a flute could be heard, and from outside their room stands a young-looking male elf. Said elf was Shira's older brother Kira, who cordially introduces himself to the group. Furious at the man, Diablo confronts Kira, noting how he put a bounty on Shira's head, and he confirms it. Kira then states that he was informed of a group of bounty hunters' failure to capture his sister. Apprehensive with Kira, Diablo openly states he has no intention of handing over Shira to him, but Kira merely states that he's glad to see his sister in good health. Furthermore, he relays the blame for the bounty being placed and the threats of war on his father. Shira doesn't buy her brother's act, and although Kira acts in an apologetic manner, Rem doesn't buy it either, stating she's inclined to follow Shira's opinion of him. Not wanting to start a scene, Kira leaves, but details he'll return the following day and asks what if Shira decides to return home on her own free will. Thinking nothing of it, Diablo answers that there's no way she would ever think that. Later, Rem and Shira talk with one another, and it escalates rather quickly into a playful scuffle between the two. At the Kingdom of Greenwood, Kira stands on top of a tall tree while playing his flute. When finished, he proclaims that Shira will be his again, and she'll bear his child. Diablo has a dream of his childhood, where two kids he thought were his friends were just using him for stronger equipment in a game. Awakening from the dream, Diablo finds himself in a predicament in bed. Afterward, Rem leaves with Alicia to respectively report to Seals and Galford about their encounter with Kira. Alone with Shira, Diablo starts create potions in preparation of the trials ahead of them. Astonishingly, Diablo is able to create potion merely by focusing on the task. During a heart-to-heart between Diablo and Shira, the sound of a flute being played could be heard. In a trance-like state, Shira details that she wants to return to her home of the Kingdom of Greenwood and then leaves on a wagon that Kira just so happened to be riding on. Left disconcerted, Rem and Alicia return to Diablo, who informs the two that Shira has returned to the Kingdom of Greenwood. Wanting to know why, Diablo doesn't answer Rem's question and instead heads back into the inn and lays on his bed depressed over what happened. Later that day, Rem joins Diablo in his room and tries to console him by talking about Shira. Asking if Shira could have been hypnotized by Kira, Diablo confirms it, mentioning that when Kira arrived the sounds of his flute could be heard. Ruminating on his past naive mistakes in regards to what he considered people to be his friends were merely taking advantage of him. Adamant that she wants to get Shira back, Rem asks what Diablo's intentions are, and after reflecting on it, he decides to get Shira back too. Alicia also volunteers to join them as well. Now, with a full party, the group sets off to confront Kira. Meanwhile, in a tent in the Kingdom of Greenwood, Shira, now captured and chained to the wall, is told by her brother that it's futile to try and escape. This is due to the powers of the elven flute. Kira then interrogates Shira, demanding to know what orders Diablo asked of her. Answering truthfully, Shira informs her brother how the only order she was ever given was to shake Rem's hand with a smile. Hearing this infuriates Kira, as he doesn't believe such a simple order was given. Nonetheless, Kira is confident that he has Shira in his submission. But just then a giant explosion occurs from outside. Upset by this disturbance, Kira sets loose a fabric-eating slime, and said monster starts to entangle Shira and devour her clothing. Crying for help, Diablo, accompanied by Rem and Alicia, arrive to rescue the captured Shira. Seeing Shira's predicament, Diablo voices his regret in not dealing with Kira before, even if it meant burning everything around him into cinders. He then uses his scythe to free Shira from her constraints, killing the slime in the process. Furious that his guards failed to do their job, Diablo points out that Kira failed to hear the noise from outside earlier. Checking outside, Kira is astonished that not only his guards were defeated, but the surrounding area they were stationed in was set ablaze. Kira demands to know if Diablo wants to start a war with the elves. However, Diablo's motives were to confirm if Shira truly wanted to return home under her own volition. When asked for proof, Kira asks Shira if she wants to return home or not. Under her brother's manipulative magic, Shira answers that does want to return home to the Kingdom of Greenwood. To counteract Kira's magic, Diablo uses Shira's slave collar to dispel the manipulation spell, and Shira tearfully proclaims that she wants to be free and stay with Diablo and Rem forever. Backed into a corner, Kira summons the Elven Kingdom's treasure, the Hydra, and intrepidly, despite Shira's warning, Diablo steps forth to face off against it. Diablo and his group face off against the Kingdom of Greenwood treasured summon, the Hydra. Although Shira warns Diablo of how dangerously powerful it is, Diablo confidently proclaims he'll destroy it. Noting how the creature wasn't part of the original Cross Reverie game, as was Kira's flute, Diablo finds these discoveries rather exciting. Starting the battle off, Diablo casts Heaven's Fall, which destroys one of the Hydra's heads, but immediately it regenerates the lost head. The newly regenerated Hydra head then uses the wind variant of Dragon's Breath, blowing Diablo backwards. The attack is a normal attack and not a magical one, leaving Diablo at a disadvantage because he can only reflect magical spells. Noting how summons normally only have one skill, the Hydra has two, and then all four heads spew multiple Dragon's Breath attacks at Diablo. While Diablo processes the last attack used on him, Shira gloats about how he's in control of the situation while the Hydra continues to rampage. At a safe spot with Rem and Alicia, Shira shouts out to Diablo about how Diablo can defeat the Hydra by destroying the monster's core. Proclaiming that futility of that tactic, Kira details that the Hydra's core moves throughout its body, making it near impossible to find and destroy. However, now aware of this weakness, Diablo slides under the Hydra's belly and casts Matoi Izuna, which eviscerates the Hydra. The fight now over, Diablo planned to execute Kira, but is stopped by Shira just as a wounded Celsior arrived at the scene and stands in front of Kira in an attempt to protect the prince. Shira states that while she loathes Kira, he's still her family. Disgustedly, Kira flees the scene, only to be beheaded by Galford as he magically appears on the scene with an army of his soldiers. Celsior tries to attack Galford, who knocks him down without effort with a wind spell. Walking toward Diablo's group, he states his reason for killing Kira, and then orders his men to deal with the elven soldiers scattered within the forest and capture Shira. Diablo then demands to know if this was all part of Galford's plot to seize control of the elven forest. Galford refuses to answer and entraps Diablo in a sphere-shaped grid that's a magical spell designed to capture monsters. Intervening, Alicia tries to reason with Galford as the elven forces have in a sense surrendered. On the other hand, Galford states that his was using his authority based on his military judgment. In response to that, Alicia draws her sword and threatens to stop him, but Galford briskly breaks her sword. Witnessing this astonishes Diablo as Galford's movements surpass human limits, making him a level above 100. Just as Galford orders his men to follow through with his previous order, Diablo manages to break out of his confinement by sensing the barrier's magical flow and destroying its core. After a brief talk, Galford and Diablo face off against each other. Immediately, Galford holds a firm advantage over Diablo by maintaining a close distance between his opponent and uses it to unleash a flurry of sword attacks onto the vulnerable Diablo. To counterattack the invasive Galford, Diablo casts Supermine that forces Galford to move to a more fair distance. Taking advantage of his tactic, Diablo casts multiple Supermine attacks and lays them across the ground. Using swift footwork, Galford making his move and triggers a single mine. Diablo then casts Freeze Zone to entrap Galford in a block of ice. However, moments after he breaks out of it, leaving Diablo in a vulnerable state due to his left spell's recoil effect. Just as Galford was about to finish off Diablo with the Heat Sonic skill, Diablo casts Lightning Bullet at Galford, defeating him. Struggling to get up, Galford asks why Diablo won't finish him off. In his character's persona, Diablo answers that he's lost interest in him, believing him to be unworthy of such a thing. Galford then proclaims he'll report him to the Majesty about Diablo. However, Alicia steps in and retorts that she'll submit a counter-report about Galford's actions. Furthermore, Diablo promises if Galford ever wants to fight him again, he'll do so whenever he so pleases. With that, Galford withdraws his soldiers and Rem approaches Diablo asking him for any spare potions he has on him. The potions in question were not for her, but for the wounded elven soldiers. After this, Diablo consoles an emotional Shira over the loss of her brother Kira. Time passes by and back in Faltra City's peace of mind Diablo recounts all that has occurred after. He laments over not only how being drained of his MP affects his mental state, but how the quest assigned to him would never be settled due to the circumstances behind it involving Galford. Sylvie then arrives in Diablo's room with an alcoholic MP potion alternative, and the two start to drink it. Immediately after drinking it, Diablo becomes intoxicated and mistakes Sylvie for a body pillow, leading him to throwing her onto the bed. Afterwards, Sylvie asks him to take responsibility for what happened, only to find him asleep, still embracing her body. causing her to get agitated. A silhouetted woman slays a group of adventurers, stating her distaste for mortal races, while another man slays people of an unknown village for worshipping the Demon Lord. Alicia returns to the kingdom of Lyferia Castle, where she runs into Paladin Sadler. The two briefly talk with one another, and just as Alicia tries to excuse herself, Sadler details that if she's returning to Faltra City, he's heading there as well. His motives being that the head priest Lumashina revealed a prophecy concerning the Demon Lord's revival in the western city. Meanwhile, in the outskirts of the aforementioned city, Diablo and Rem oversee Shira summoning a turkey shot. Rem explains the summon's special ability called Synchro Sight, which allows its caster to see everything it sees. Although a weak monster, Shira still decides to make a pact with it, and pulls out a magical stone to forge the pact in the enslavement ritual. A magical stone is also given to Diablo by Rem, and then Shira uses her magical stone to forge a pact with her newly summoned turkey shot. Stating how practical Shira's new summon could be for her, Diablo helps Shira break in her new summon by using its Synchro Sight skill and firing an arrow at a coin that Diablo tossed. After this, Shira claims that Rem has a funky smell, which leads to her suggesting they all take a bath together. At a local river stream, Shira and Rem bath together, while a flustered Diablo refuses to watch them do him, not being able to handle seeing them bath. Eventually, Edelgard arrives at the scene and grabs a hold of Rem, reassuring them that she's not there to fight, but simply to talk and confirm that Rem is the container of Krebskalm. Later that evening, Rem explains to Shira about her being the container to Krebskalm, and is then emotionally embraced by Shira and promises to help her. Edelgard then details that there's a way to resurrect Krebskalm without killing Rem. However, Rem once told Diablo that she wants to release the seal on her. This is problematic, as although their goals are somewhat aligned, the question remains, how will Diablo be able to deal with Krebskalm once she's been revived? Speaking for Rem, Diablo agrees to help Edelgard with the ritual, and although this leads to a minor confrontation, Edelgard states that 3 days from then, she'll meet them on the night of full moon at the top of the Starfall Tower. 3 days pass and Diablo's group dine at a restaurant filled with cats until they're visited by Alicia, who implores that they return to the Peace of Mind Inn. Walking to the inn, Alicia warns the group that a paladin known as Sadler is in the town and is out to hunt worshippers of the Demon Lord. Furthermore, his strength and power is said to be equal or greater than Galford. Despite their efforts to try and avoid a confrontation with Sadler, the group runs into him and his subordinates. Sadler introduces himself and his title. Diablo then tries to introduce himself in a normal fashion. He openly introduces himself in his normal pretentious character persona. Taking account that Diablo a self-proclaimed demon lord, Sadler readies himself to dispose of his target. Stepping in to defend Diablo, Rem tries to reason with Sadler only for the paladin to incapacitate her with a magical spell. Diablo, however, manages to dispel the magic used on Rem. After a brief argument between Diablo and Sadler, the paladin casts Cement Lock on the Demon Lord only for it to be reflected back on him. As Sadler's subordinates then carry away their petrified leader, Alicia asks why Diablo didn't finish Sadler off, to which he answers small fries pose no threat. However, if he were to challenge him again, he will deal with him accordingly. To that, Alicia smiles and understands Diablo's sentiments, but Diablo is wary of Alicia. As the dusk starts to settle, the group prepare to head to the Starfall Tower to meet with Edelgard and perform the summoning ritual. On top of the Starfall Tower, Diablo's group meet with Edelgard to perform the ritual to revive Krebskalm. How Krebskalm will be revived is by her laying on top of a stone table, as magic power will be filled into Krebskalm's soul. Not hesitant to any risks that may occur in the ritual process, Rem calmly states that she's ready to start the ritual. Wasting no time, Diablo starts to pour his magical power into Rem from her belly button. But this attempt fails to reach Krebskalm. Therefore, Edelgard suggests that Diablo do it via Rem's private area, and this time Diablo manages to reach Krebskalm's seal and break it, sequentially releasing the Demon Lord. As the smoke starts to dissipate from the area, Krebskalm ostentatiously appears and introduces herself. Diablo in character also introduces himself and proclaims his will to fight and defeat Krebskulm. Amused by the proclamation, Krebskulm powers up and threatens to dispose of Diablo, only to become perplexed on how to do so in a demon lord manner. Alluding that Krebskulm has amnesia and taking to account for her adolescent demeanor, Rem and Shira manage to convince Krebskulm to not kill mortals anymore. Astounded by this turn of events, Alicia tries to reason with Krebskulm to denounce her agreement to never kill mortals any longer and for Edelgard to back her up. However, Krebskulm still refuses due to it not being able to fill her stomach, and Edelgard is obsequious to Krebskulm's whims. Now hungry, Shira gives Krebskulm the biscuits she had on her, and Krebskulm instantly becomes addicted to them. Krebskulm then claims she remembers her destiny, which is to devour all of the world's biscuits. Afterward, the group head back to the city, while Diablo carries the languid Rem. From above, the fallen Ulric appears before the group and introduces himself as one whom has served the demon lords for generations. He offers to sacrifice Diablo and company as a celebratory means for an auspicious occasion. However, Krebskulm refuses Ulric in doing that, as she wouldn't be able to eat any biscuits because of it. Perplexed and upset that the newly revived demon lord refuses to follow through her mission to dispose of all mortals, Ulric tries to attack what he calls the incomplete Krebskulm. However, Edelgard stops him, leading into a scuffle between the two, and Diablo intervenes to rescue Edelgard before she's killed. Diablo then faces off against Ulric, casting spells like Flare Burst and Supermine against Ulric, but both attacks do not damage the fallen. Ulric then casts Quartz Lance, but Diablo reflects the spell back onto Ulric. Shocked that Diablo has the same ability as the Demon Lord of Mind and Kveros, Ulric uses his sonic speed to try and kill Krebskulm once again, only to be hit with Diablo's lightning bullet. Unable to beat Diablo and comprehend his proclamation of being the true demon lord, Ulric transforms into an owl and flees the scene. Once again, Alicia questions whether or not allowing his opponent to escape was a wise decision. However, Diablo again brushes it off. In truth, he wanted to avoid creating a dangerous predicament for the group and suggests they move onward back to the city. Edelgard, kneeling before Krebskulm, states that she is unable to enter into the city and shall stay in the forest. To avoid Krebskulm's identity from being exposed, Shira suggests that her name be changed from Krebskulm to Clem. Back in their room at the Peace of Mind Inn, Clem and Shira both get in bed with Diablo in an attempt to help him recover his lost MP. Meanwhile, in Alicia's room, she reflects on her life, on her harsh and horrible upbringing, along with her orders from His Majesty of the Kingdom of Lyferia. Alicia then calmly states her resolve to follow the Demon Lord's creed to eliminate the mortal races. Elsewhere, Sadler is shown to be free from his petrification. Walking through Faltra City, Shira and Clem sing the Biscuit song together and have Rem join in their song as well. Alicia, quietly with a scornful look on her face, listens as they sing the song together. Later at a cafe, Diablo meets with Seals, and the two talk about Clem, who sits with Rem, Shira, and Alicia at another table. Seals states that she's happy that Clem is as innocent as she is, but will keep an eye on her regardless. After this, Diablo and Shira talk about how understanding Seals was toward Clem, but then realize that her, Rem, and Alicia have separated from them. The two find out that they're not in their room at the Peace of Mind Inn. Therefore, Diablo has Shira wait there until he finds them. Meanwhile, down a dark and narrow alley, Alicia holds Kelm by her wrist, and Rem states her curiosity as to where Alicia is leading them to. Alicia reveals her true nature and intentions to have Clem regain her memories for her to become the Demon Lord Krebskulm. It's also revealed that Alicia was the one who convinced Gallic to sacrifice himself to summon Gregor into the city. The group is then confronted by Sadler and his subordinates, and Alicia puts on an act that implicates Rem and Clem as Demon Lord worshippers. In retaliation, Rem summons Asulau, but Sadler's subordinates restrain it, and Sadler finishes Asulau off. Rem then tries and attacks Sadler. However, he uses his magic to restrain her. As Rem fades out of consciousness, Alicia whispers into her ear that she needs hatred. Elsewhere, Diablo continues his search for Rem, Clem, and Alicia, and believes the paladin to be the one responsible for all of them being missing. Eventually, Rem awakens in an iron cage along with Clem that is loaded onto a wagon heading for an unknown location. Clem and Rem then have a heart-to-heart with each other of how Rem and her mother suffered because of Clem's existence. Also, they talk about Rem's ambivalent feelings toward Clem. Soon, the wagon stops nearby a church where Sadler will save Rem and Clem. Inside of the church is an assortment of torture weapons, and Rem openly proclaims her refusal to admit that she's a demon lord worshipper. Contrary to that statement, Sadler still believes Rem is a demon lord worshipper. With Rem restrained, Sadler announces his intentions to purify Rem by slicing off her ears and tail. Rem then tries to plead for help from Alicia. However, she refuses and leaves Sadler to do his business. That night at the Adventurers Guild, Diablo tries to enlist the help of the guild members, but he does acts out of character, which puts him in a predicament. It was by the sudden appearance of a young beastman boy that notifies them all of an unnamed Pantherian and a young girl being taken hostage by a paladin. Demanding to know where the boy saw them last, he tells Diablo it was at a church. Diablo then thanks the boy and rushes off to the church. Emile and Sylvie brush it off. As Diablo heads to Rem and Clem's location, a swarm of fallen surround the city, and Galford orders his men to notify Seals to strengthen the barrier around the town. Seals in question concentrates all of her power into the city's barrier. Back at the church, Sadler readies himself to purify Rem, but is attacked by Clem, whose identity as a fallen is revealed. Drawing his swords at Clem, he tries to attack her, but Rem protects Clem by embracing her and taking the sword blow onto her back. Just as Clem promises to deal with Sadler and his subordinates, Sadler stabs several swords into Rem's back. This causes Clem to expel a surge of energy from her body, and Rem then realizes what Alicia meant when she told her that she needs hatred. Now that Clem was fully awakened as Krebskalm, Sadler tries to kill her, but fails as his eyes gets mutilated by Clem herself, and she disintegrates Sadler with her flames, killing him and ending his sadistic plans, which the attack also kills his followers and destroys the church they were in, and the excess energy tries to penetrate the barrier. Diablo finally arrives at the scene, and is then joined by Shira, who managed to locate Rem's whereabouts with the help of her turkey shot. Believing that Rem is in trouble, Diablo hands Shira some healing potions to Shira for her to use on Rem as he goes to face off against Krebskalm. Outside of Feltra City, Edelgard and Eulerex, along with a massive army of fallen, relish the fact that Krebskalm has finally fully resurrected. The two are soon joined by Alicia, who is revealed to be the mastermind behind the entire plot to fully resurrect Krebskalm. As Galford cogitates over the situation at hand, Sylvie visits him and assures him that the problem north of the city will be dealt with, and he should focus his energy on the threat to the west. As Diablo faces off against Krebskalm, and Shira uses the healing potions given to her by Diablo to treat Rem's injuries. For the time being, Diablo manages to dodge Krebskalm's attacks while laying down trap spells. When Krebskalm uses Darkness Breath, Diablo counters it with Volcanic Wall. On Shira's side, she uses the last of the healing potions on Rem, hoping that she'll recover. Thankfully, Rem regains consciousness and informs Shira of Alicia's betrayal. Returning to Diablo's battle against Krebskalm, he struggles to fight against her as she now tosses stone coffins at Diablo, who is in a pinch, or giving away all of his healing potions to Shira. Right when a coffin was about to hit Rem and Shira, Emile appears before them and takes the hit. Finally able to set 13 spots to cast his grand magic, Diablo casts Apocalypse Abyss. Although effective against Krebskalm, it was not enough to destroy her. It was thanks to Rem being shouldered by Shira that she manages to reason with Krebskalm, which allows her to revert back to Clem. Surprised that Krebskalm changed into a young girl, Diablo asks if Emile would turn a blind eye to this, but he reassures Diablo that he's an ally to all women. Outside of the city, since Alicia's plane is now foiled by Diablo, she is shocked by it and was about to face ridicule from Eulerex for her failed attempt at resurrecting the Demon Lord and wasting their time for nothing. However, Edelgard manages to distract the fallen army behind him, allowing Alicia to escape. Eventually, Sylvie meets up with Diablo and group thanks them for their efforts in stopping Krebskalm. but deduces that Clem is Krebscombe. Despite the protests from Rem and Shira, Sylvie details that Clem may have summoned the army of Fallen outside of the city, therefore precautions must be taken. Hence Diablo suggests that Clem become his slave, and she agrees to it. Thereafter Diablo follows the enslavement ritual and Clem becomes Diablo's slave. Afterward, Sylvie reports the results to the recent events to Galford, who was already aware of most of it due to his information network. That night in Diablo's room at the Peace of Mind Inn, the group get ready to retire for the night until Alicia appears and takes Shira hostage with a knife. She is shocked to see that Rem is still alive, who is still angry at her betrayal. Clem threatens Alicia to release Shira or else she'll kill her. Alicia promises to allow Clem to do whatever she wants to her so long as Clem helps her with something. That something was to heal the heavily wounded Edelgard, and because she's a Fallen, only Clem would be able to do it. Alicia also details where and how Edelgard received her injuries and confirms to Diablo that she was in cahoots with Edelgard all along, who already figured it out since the ritual, and that she was behind Gregor's attack in the town. Following Diablo's request, Clem heals Edelgard, who prostrates herself to Clem for her merciful act. After Clem briefs Edelgard on why and how she's back to her old self, she orders Edelgard to stop killing mortals as a show of loyalty towards her. To that order, Edelgard agrees to obey Clem's command. Once that's all settled with, Alicia resolves to face whatever consequence Diablo and her group will do to her. Instead, Rem first asks Alicia what made her side with the Fallen, and in response to that, Alicia blames her upbringing being surrounded by shallow nobles and Imperials. Listening to Alicia's story, Diablo relates to it from his own experiences when he was back in his own world. Again, Alicia asks Clem if she doesn't despise the mortal races, which she annoyingly tells her that she doesn't, and nothing she says will change that. Forced to take her word and her actions were for nothing, Alicia tries to stab herself in the neck, but her knife is dissolved by Diablo's magic. He then gives an eloquent speech about how Alicia should find a new purpose to live for, which brings her to tears, becoming flaccid over his lack of MP. All of the women now, also including Alicia and Edelgard, volunteer to help Diablo recover his lost MP, much to his dismay. The following day, Diablo, Rem, and Shira see Alicia off, and later, the girls get into an argument over what food they'll eat for dinner. They soon choose to settle the argument by having Diablo kissing the one whose side he's on. However, he refuses to choose either choice as he's Demon Lord Diablo.